This is a quick tutorial on assignment 3. Specifically, I'm going to focus on the Excel spreadsheet so that you get a sense of what to put in there. But I also wanted to just quickly show you what the mock-up of the website that we're building and will debut this summer in August 2021 to give you a sense of why you're doing this. And so this is what is called a landing page. It's basically the place that people come to initially. This is going to be the sharing stories from 1977, putting the National Women's Conference on the MAP site. And so we'll have, basically this site that features a lot of places around Houston. And specifically, we have different sections of the site. The historical storytelling section, why the NWC matters. Discover NWC stories, which will be biographies that people can read, and also oral histories and archival documents on each person, each participant that was part of the National Women's Conference. So the person that you're assigned will not only be featured on the mapping feature that you're working on, but also other students will come back in and will build on your research and write up the NWC stories there. And then how to contribute. So this is going to be a big crowdsourcing, a national crowdsourcing enterprise. So you do have an opportunity to contribute to the project if you'd like to after our class. So just to give you a sense of specifically the work that you're doing, one of the key features of our site is going to be this mapping the NWC section. And so you can see here on the left-hand side, a lot of the different major search items for people coming to the site are the tabs on the Excel spreadsheet. So if you go to the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet, don't forget that there's a lot of different tabs there to work through. And so you can see that people will be able to do quick searches based on these categories, but also there will be advanced searches. So if you want to know, for instance, all of the AAPI participants who also were members of the National Organization for Women, you can do that kind of an advanced search. And then there's going to be lots of different areas. So delegations, that's what you're working on. You're working on one state or territory delegation. And we'll have 56 of those in that area, but then also national commissioners, torch relay runners, journalists. There's other areas that haven't been presented here, such as the volunteers at this conference, and international dignitaries, and also those that went to the anti-IWI conference down at the Astrodome. So it's a really big project. And so what you're doing is one particular section. And so as you saw there, we just looked at the basic data, education and career, electoral politics, organizational and political. The racial and ethnic identifiers is within basic data, and then people's roles at the NWC. So you were working on one particular area, and I just wanted to highlight, for instance, that really, even though the Excel spreadsheet that you have has all of the participants in a particular delegation, you're really engaging one. So some of the tabs have places where you write answers in, you type them in, and others have drop downs. And I just wanted to highlight that it's really important that you do not guess. We are not interested in you filling information just to fill information. We want you to fill in the facts, the historical facts that you can find in the research that you're doing. So for instance, if someone self-identifies as Korean, certainly fill that in. If you do not know what the racial identification or ethnic identification is of the individual in all of your research, then hit unknown. If they are clearly identifying as Black, then you would put yes in this particular category, and you would put not applicable in all other categories. So it's really important that you think about as much as you possibly can filling in each particular tab. That being said, sometimes you may not know the information and there isn't a drop down. So for instance, age in 1977, if you just don't know that information, you can't find it, then you can leave it blank, and that is okay. And then I would say in the notes section at the end here, that's where you might put information, research but unknown. So the other thing is that some of these categories are write-in categories. And so, for instance, if we go to actually education and career, you can see in this column L, job and profession. So this is a write-in category. So if someone, for instance, says that they are a teacher, then you can write that in. If they have more than one career, then you would add a new row behind. And so basically you can make these rows as long as you possibly want them to be, and kind of extend them so that you can write more information in if you need to. Organizational and political. So this is one where a lot of these categories you're just going to go straight across and write, basically unknown or yes, and you don't actually have to fill in every single one. Sometimes it's going to be that a person self-identifies as being a member of LULAC, but you have no idea if they are a member of League of Women Voters. So I think that if you want to just fill in unknown for each of these categories that you really don't know if they're in an organization or not, that's completely fine. And there might be moments where you have learned of an organization that someone belonged to that is not listed here. And so what you do is you add a new column, you write in the name of the organization as best as you know it, and then you bold the column in yellow, you highlight it. And so that's because there's so many organizations that people are involved in that we want to be able to quick look and see new organizations to add. And the point of this is to be able to map out all over the country who belong to different types of organizations to trace their associationalism or their kind of networks and belonging. And that's a really important part of the legacy question. The other thing is that some of your participants might be involved in more than one role at the end National Women's Conference, and so you can highlight that here. And so this is anytime there's a drop down, it's really important to pick which one of these. And so if you haven't found the information, then unknown is kind of our default. But if you know that they were a delegate, which most of your participants are, then certainly hit yes there. And so it's important to fill out these these rows as much as you can possibly do. But we, as I mentioned, do not want you to make up information. And in fact, one of the ways that we'll be grading this assignment is by spot checking your research. And so, if there's a lot of inaccuracies, or conceptual errors, then that will be certainly a mark against the research. It's really important for accuracy because when the information is out there, it's going to set the historical record. So this is some of the first information that we're gathering as historians on these people. The other thing is, in terms of accuracy, it's really important to have consistency across the board so that when we work with our tech partners, they don't have a lot of trouble coding this material. And so what are these three extra categories? Well, questions is if something comes up in your research and there's not like a really obvious category already established on this particular database, Excel spreadsheet, then you can put a question in here and we can take care of it. And you can add more questions going along with new columns behind. So ask as many questions and bring up as many issues or points of consideration that you want other researchers in the future to think about as you possibly can. And then sources. This is an extremely important part of this research. We don't need you to write down necessarily the sources that we already know about, like the Randall document. We're looking for specific sources. And so say you do a bunch of newspaper research, which is probably going to be the place that you find the most material. So you have newspapers.com, you have the historical newspaper database, you've got, Google, you've got, I believe, Nexus Uni, so essentially these places you might find an article that's specifically on your person or your person is mentioned. And so we need to know the titles of the sources and the URLs. And you can add more than 5 sources, so as many as you possibly come up with, it's great. And this is a really important research trail because other scholars and other students are going to be coming back and doing more research about your person. But you are really the first frontline researcher because none of the people that you're working on have been researched yet. So this is an important part that we're going to be looking for in thinking about how to assess your research. And then the other piece that's probably the most important in terms of how we're going to think about grading is to show your work in the research checklist. And so you'll see that every particular source that you're being asked to research here has a column. And so when you are looking at the Randall document, for instance, the best place to start, you would put in here, essentially, I found out the person's, race. I found out that the person did or did not identify as a feminist. And that's the extent of what I could find there. So you could write a sentence or a phrase that highlights the specific kind of research that you found there. Newspapers.com, you might want to show like what were the search terms that you looked for. So maybe list those out. And then again here, what was the kind of, information that you found on the newspapers? How many newspaper articles did you look at? How useful was this particular source? So think about as, providing as much information as you possibly can about your process. So in digital humanities work, we, really assess the impact of a project in it that's a work in progress based on the process rather than the product. So the product, is not going to come out for a number of years, and we'll be adding to our website, for a long, long time. And so how do we assess your individual contribution in this really wide-scale collaborative project? Well, it's your research checklist. And so, going through and really highlighting for each of these particular sources, how you use them, what you found, what you couldn't find, as well, like the kinds of searches you did that were not productive, that didn't actually, help expand your awareness of this particular participant. That's what we want to know as much as what you did find, because it's really the work that you did that is being assessed here. So we talked about sources, but also we're looking at the particular kinds of data. So here again, you want to express what you were able to find and what you were not able to find on each of these particular categories. And then if you want to do the bonus, go for some bonus points, this is the place where you highlight specifically how you use these bonus sources, the Hathi Trust, Heritage Quest, the Rossi book, the Sproul book, and History Makers. So that's essentially what the mechanics of the Excel spreadsheet, is. And I want to just really quickly also draw focus to how to work through the assignment instructions. And so you'll see that there's two sections, basically. One in the step-by-step, which I really encourage you to just, go through specifically in order. The step-by-step directions are really your friend here. And one area that is highlighted is the 9 sources that we are expecting every student to work through. Specifically what we have here is a step-by-step instruction of how to use that particular collection or particular source. And beyond this smaller version, you have also in the how-to guides resources folder on Blackboard, you have more specific information, these step-by-step with screenshot, PDFs that give you a sense of specifically how to use each one of these sources. So my suggestion is when you're working through a source to have the how-to guide very close at hand, to always have the assignment guide at hand as well, and to go through methodically one source and then the next source and then the next source. And when you're working through the sources, incorporate the information that you're finding from the sources and immediately put your notes in here on how you research that particular element. And remember, it doesn't matter how long you make this particular row, because you're the only one that's using this Excel spreadsheet that you're turning in. So really, if you want to make it as long as possible, that's fine. It's really important that you actually use these Excel spreadsheets. Do not work on a Google Doc or anything like that and then cut and paste in here. It has to be done within the Excel spreadsheet. So that's a really important pointer. So the other thing is, working through one by one these sources, and then once you're working into the source, my suggestion would be to have this assignment guide open and to, work through each of these particular tabs, explanations on your guide. And so, in the instructions, we have specific directions on how to fill out every single column on the Excel spreadsheet and every single tab, every single component of the Excel spreadsheet. So this really is important to also have open when you're doing your research. And then you'll go through this part of page 7 to 13 every time you work with the source, and start over again. If you've already figured out the latitude or the population, you can skip those. But if you're still looking for marriage, then you need to, think about, okay, does this particular source answer my question about marriage classification? And then, work through this methodically. This whole process is going to take basically the same amount of time that it would to write a paper. It's just a different kind of research and analysis and historical and trying to come up with historical meaning. So that end product that you would normally do present in writing a paper is instead presented in your sources tab, in your research checklist tab, and also in the work that you'll be doing in your share in the discussion forum. So I think it's important to allow for enough time, a good day-long process. That's, how long this will take. And you can do it in chunks, which is nice that, you can kind of come back to it, work through a couple sources a day until the due date. That's one strategy to work through this. A few important things to draw focus to is that it's really, really important that you save your file in the exact way that we have presented on the instructions, because otherwise someone else has to go back and rename all the various files, and it's going to take a long time since there's so many of us. So really encourage you to save your file properly and do not lock the files when you turn them in as well. And so these are very, very important little tips to consider as you put things together. So again, what we're working towards is each one of you are working towards giving us one more participant, one more pin on our GIS maps that will ultimately, be developed for this summer's debut on Women's Equality Day. And the states that you're working on are not going to be part of the debut. The debut group is going to be Texas and the national commissioners. But I would, keep looking back, because shortly thereafter, they will be up there and you will be a named collaborator on this site, which is quite exciting. So if you have more questions, you can certainly drop into my office hours next week, and you can drop into your teaching assistant sessions in this week. And, we're excited to see what you all come up with.